Welcome back to Countdown 2019 on 99.3 Nigeria Info. We're discussing all the big and significant issues on the road to the elections. You can follow the program at Countdown 2019 NG, at Rotimi Sankore, at Nigeria Info FM, at Ideas Radio NG. You can tweet the different handles. You can also watch live on Twitter as well as on Facebook. Send questions, comments to our WhatsApp number 0809 597 5805. I Obey, still here with Rotimi Sankore, and continue the discussion.
Okay, well, welcome back, listeners. So, still talking about information or misinformation or lack of it. The INEC guidelines are not particularly clear at the moment. Different people have their interpretations of what's going to happen, especially regarding the smart reader and the incidence forms. What's INEC saying?
Well, I think that INEC is coming out with fresh guidelines, or they're going to be released on Monday, according to reports. And I do hope that we are going to be able to get Festus Okoye, who, apart from being a veteran of the civil rights, pro-democracy, anti-dictatorship struggle, is also an expert on election matters, and that presumably is why he's now a commissioner of INEC, and he's actually the commissioner in charge of voter education and publicity. So I hope that he will be able to shed light on it. But I think that the information that had been given out remains the same, which is that the card reader is what is going to be used to authenticate voting in this election. And what it says is that the guidelines make provision for a possible failure of the smart card reader, stating in clause 3 that if the smart card reader fails, a replacement has to be procured. And where that is not achieved by 2 p.m., polling would have to be postponed till the next day for a functional card reader to be provided. So the implication is that if the card reader doesn't work, you can't just fill out an incident form and then say we couldn't use the card reader, we used the manual reader to authenticate. You have to use the card reader. However, the incidents form is still retained for a situation where the PVC is read, but the fingerprint is not authenticated. Now, maybe we need some clarity about that, because our understanding is that if the fingerprint is not authenticated, then it means you're not the person who owns the card. But the voter, it's in that situation that an incidents form can be filled out and the accreditation is supposed to continue, and then it says that the matter should be referred to the presiding officer for issuance of ballot papers. Where a voter's PVC is read, but the name of the voter is not on the register, the assistant presiding officer shall refer the voter to the presiding officer, who shall issue a tendered ballot to the voter.
Which means what? What's a tendered ballot?
Well, in the event that it fails to be read by the smart card reader, the voter is required to thumbprint the appropriate box in the register of voters and give his or her phone number. It's not really clear what happens. Well, it makes an assumption, of course, doesn't it, that the voter has a phone number to be.
Is there a possibility that?
No, I'm only I'm going by a newspaper report,
okay.
And since the newspaper report itself alleges that there's nothing to make, it says that it left opposition parties with little to cheer about, as it retained the main features of the guidelines used to regulate the 2015 elections. It's only a newspaper report that I'm going by. And because at the end of the day, it's those guidelines that led to the ouster of a sitting president. So we can't say. And I do think, as I said, that we need a lot of clarity from INEC about this, because A newspaper may select what appear to it to be relevant points, but INEC needs to do a lot in terms of voter education, and not just voter education. All the agents of political parties need to know these rules because they can be very arcane. If they see somebody not being recognized by the card reader and yet a ballot paper is being issued, they will need to know what is going on and be able to either challenge it or to mark it in their own reports to their own political parties, so that they can take the matter up if necessary.
And importantly, we should be able to see the big picture of how many such ballots there are,
tendered ballots.
Yes, to see how it affects the voting.
I think that on in the end, Rotimi, it's in the interests of all of us that the election should not just be credible and free and fair, but it has to be honestly run, and it has to be something that voters, whether you win or lose, will accept. And as I said, if INEC doesn't get on top of these stories, then the end result is that we don't feel confident about the
rumor mill swings in,
and in these
people
days
will start believing whatever they choose to believe.
And you see, we need to understand that we are in an era where the type of rumors that you see circulating on social media can be so erosive, and they have a particular narrative, and this is not just something that is peculiar to Nigeria. We've seen that even in the United States, the president there doesn't seem to be able to accept that he didn't get more votes than the person whom he defeated in the election. But he didn't. And yet he keeps on talking as though, yes, he won the election, but he got 3 million fewer votes.
Through the Electoral College.
Yes. So these are things that when people start talking in this way that it's not right, it's not fair, it's not true, we end up with a situation where everybody, instead of a situation where after an election, which is for a period of 4 years and which gives you an opportunity to come back 4 years later, instead of doing that, we spend 4 years dividing ourselves more, being bitter and so on. And the fact is that whether we win or lose, after an election, a nation needs to come together. Now, we can say that in the aftermath of the current election which brought the current president to power, some of the statements that he made, the notorious 97% areas and the 5% areas, can hardly be described as statements designed to bring a nation together. But to the extent that we are not combatants, or INEC is not supposed to be a combatant, it needs to do its own part in the things that will bring us together, rather than allowing some things to fester as they have been doing.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Ayobe, for that overview on issues around information, misinformation, clarity, what INEC needs to do, and what the regulations are, which we hope will be clarified by Festus Okoye.
We will have to get hold of Festus.
Yes,
he
makes the official clarification on Monday.
Well, he makes the official release on Monday.
And then we will reach out to him.
Absolutely.
And say, you have to help us clarify. Yes. I mean, we know him.
No, I mean, and I say that because there are people like Festus Okoye in the Independent National Electoral Commission that some of us, because of our confidence in him, believe that they would not stand idly by and watch INEC compromise an election. But it's only one of how many commissioners? 12 commissioners. So we can't, but we also have resident electoral commissioners. At the end of the day, we don't expect them to see things being done wrongly and to cover them up or to keep quiet.
Okay. All right. In the few minutes we have on the ideas segment, we should speak with Hassan Soweto before we go into his manifesto later. So, welcome again.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
I've been really enjoying myself.
Yes, I can see you've been taking notes.
Yes.
Figuring out how to better defend your votes in case.
Well, not exactly. It's because I think that as a member of a political party, there's a way one has a view of INEC different from someone else who is looking at things, from outside. And from the little we have seen in our party, I must say that we have very little confidence in the integrity of the process. Like we have told INEC on different occasions, we don't think that an election is about what happens on the voting day. We think it's a summation of all activities. And if you go by the voter registration, this election is as good as already read. I can talk about E4, for instance, and that is why
which is your constituency,
which is my constituency.
And what is it that you've noticed?
The voters registration exercise was completely messed up, compromised. With INEC.
Can you be specific about?
With INEC, unloading its responsibilities on other political parties in terms of taking care of the logistics for some of these things. We know in certain places where INEC staff, are put in hotels overnight. We know how the calendar or roster for registration were changed overnight because some big elements somewhere decided to take the thing to their doorstep.
You mean the machines by which the voters' details are captured?
The machine, the staff, and everything, were compromised in that manner. And we made all of this complaint at different levels. We wrote a petition which INEC gave the impression they were going to address.
So you formally complained.
They invited us. They invited us to a meeting, which turned more or less to a shouting match because people were not prepared to even treat the petition, but they were only interested in defending the integrity of INEC. And then we got the understanding that we are going to be invited back to identify the INEC staff that we are alleging to have been responsible. Up to now, that has not happened. This is over 3 months now.
And these are not ad hoc staff. These are full-time employees of INEC.
It's hard for us to know who is an ad hoc staff.
Okay.
Who is because like we also complained in our petition, you have a registration exercise going on, and the INEC staff are not with their identity tags, so that you can even identify who is who. All of which creates the impression
and
that
yet they are in possession of INEC's
vital
machines
documents and all of this. So when you look at that, and then we say that the main election will be credible, I mean, I think it will be an illusion. If you see what has happened in Ekiti State, what happened in Osun State, then you can also see that there is a foretaste of what would happen by February. And I think that beyond the question of whether you use card reader or you don't use card reader, Osun and Ekiti election have shown that vote buying is a big issue.
Vote buying is a function of the fact that card readers are using, because you now have to have people to actually come and cast votes.
That's what I mean. But it does show that
unlike before, when it could be just allocated in
write
the back
what you
room.
like.
But what it does mean is that for big time looters, what you have only done, is to even make things easy for them. But technology now means that instead of renting thugs and co to be causing crisis on election day,
which still happens,
but it only happens in the situation where a candidate feels that his opponent is having an edge somewhere. So the best thing is to disrupt things so that you can force a cancellation. But the reality for us, going by the Ekiti and Osun election, is that the election itself can be determined on the eve by how much money you put out, buying people, going to their doorstep, using local chiefs and co. So that you therefore realize that perhaps the ultimate way to actually ensure that the electoral process is credible is a mass mobilization of the people, to be prepared to stand by a candidate and the party they think has a clear program to rescue them. And they are ready to use that as a basis to defeat the money bags at the other end.
But
without
does a party like yours, which is the Socialist Party of Nigeria, does a party like yours, do you feel that you're making that inroad to actually get the voters themselves? Because at the end of the day, it's the voters who either sell their votes or don't. We've heard of cases where people will tell candidates, especially those whom they perceive to be money bags, we're not going to come out and vote if we don't vote, if you don't pay us. But on the other hand, they may not tell a candidate who isn't perceived as a money bag that they're not going to come out. They just don't come out.
Well, our own experience in IFO has shown that where people are seriously deprived and they have been disappointed over and over, and they are so angry and they see a credible alternative, then they can rise up on their feet, in order to rescue their destiny. It doesn't mean that this is going to happen automatically. But what we have seen so far in the campaign, because just like you have said, the approach and the way people respond to us and they respond to our opponents is very different. When we did the flag off of our campaign and we were going about the communities, one old woman, held my hand to declare me as a favorite candidate. And why? Because she asked pointed questions about the lack of public infrastructures in our area. And I'm talking of Olambe, Matogo and Co. These are places, if you see the pictures of those places, you would think that these are pictures of Somalia or somewhere where a bomb had recently landed. And that is a result of lack of governance by either PDP or APC administration over the past 16 years or 18 years in that area. Now, she asked questions about fixing the road. And I told her clearly that I'm not part of those politicians who would declare that I would grade your road even without winning the election yet, because I want to use money that I have to deceive you into voting for me when I know that I have 4 years to steal 10 times of that sum. And that rather than that, what I will do is that together with the campaigning we are doing, we are going to start a process, a society action, to compel the present government to begin to take actions on those roads. But more importantly, if you get there, you are going to find an honorable lawmaker like no other, who will make the issue of public infrastructures a centerpiece of his agitation on the floor of the assembly. And that where the legislative niceties fail to compel the government to do what is needed, I'll be prepared to come down to the people, to mobilize them, to take action, because we think that development is a right of the people.
Now, it looks
when I said that, she raised my hand and declared that anytime we want to march over this issue, she's ready to follow us. Meanwhile, a week after, our opponents, because they wanted to also look pro-people, they now carried some construction equipment to start doing some haphazard grading of the road, something which even worsened the situation. But people read through their antics and said, when we needed this grading, you didn't do it. During the rainy season, when all of us will swim in an ocean of mud, a few weeks to election, you are doing this. We know that you want to deceive us all over. And that shows that our people, they are not fools. They are not, even those who collect money for politicians, some of them think that they are trying to punish them, that they want to punish these politicians who have been looting their resources. So let us take what we can get from them. But what we tell them is that this thing does not hurt politicians. A politician can lose 20 million in an election, and the next 4 years we see him contesting again. These are low cost. These are crooks. I'm talking of capitalist politicians. The people must be prepared to rise up on their feet, to throw them out, not by collecting their cover. You think you are hurting them. It's about using
I need to, as I said to you, the ideas section of the program, ideas stands for integrity, democracy, ethics, and accountability. And it does seem to me as though your platform includes demanding accountability if you get into the House, and even quite frankly, if you don't, because one can be an elected politician and one can be a non-elected politician still have a huge impact on the behavior of a government. But I wonder, with your campaign, is your party concentrating its effort in the whole of Ogun State, or is it the whole of Nigeria, or is it in a certain few selected seats within Ogun State? Because it does seem that many of these states, the state houses of assembly seem to be sort of at most divided between two parties, and generally when the winning party takes over, we've often seen the opposition party now joining, because they want to share in the quote and unquote goodies such as allocation of cars and so on, that the main party in power at that stage is
The
given, so
executive
that
specifically.
the State House of Assembly, as you say, Rotimi, becomes nothing more than a rubber stamp. And people get discouraged because they vote for an opposition party only to see that opposition party representative abandoning the trust that the people have reposed in them, expecting that they will go there and say, I'm not interested in these handouts. I want to make the point about accountability on the floor, and I want that to be part of what I am doing for my people.
Oh, yes. Well, for our party, as we have clearly enunciated, we do not intend to follow the route that all these capitalist politicians have followed so far. Because the very essence for the emergence of our party itself is because we have seen clearly that the root of capitalism can never develop Nigeria, and that we need a different developmental agenda for Nigeria. One that will include the collective ownership and management of the immense wealth of this country. Democratically by the working people. Because, for instance, in my constituency, the issue of electricity is one of the biggest issues. And I have said as a legislator, I'm going to be very interested in the performance of the disco in our area, but not just in their performance, but also I will be prepared to lead a movement, to demand the renationalization of the electricity sector. Because what is clear from the experience of all of us across the country is that this privatization has failed. So from there you can see that we are a party that is very different. But unfortunately,
but you may be different. But if you get into office, how will you resist the blandishments to make you keep quiet on the floor of the house?
The party is a collection of activists, revolutionary socialists, people who have gone through the furnace. I am speaking to you as somebody who has been trained, in the struggle over the years. In the blast furnace, I spent 10 years
tested
in OAU.
by fire.
Yes.
Yeah.
I spent 10 years, a decade in OAU. I didn't fail a single course.
And yet
6 years out of it, on different occasions, we were thrown out of school by university authorities that insisted on pricing education.
For protests.
For protest.
Look, I'm not going to allow you old
At
radical
a point,
students
we were even
to
thrown
be-
into prison. I spent over 5 months in Leicester prison.
Yeah.
If I spent I
And
did,
could you have come out if you
And-
had said the right thing?
could I have done what?
Could you have been able to come
Would
out
you have
of
been
prison?
released earlier if you had compromised?
I would not even have tasted prison. I would have been a rich young man, who would be rich on the basis of, using the pains and sufferings of other Nigerians and marketing it. Just like our current leaders of NANS
Well, we
are
don't really
doing-
see that.
are doing at the moment. Because you must also understand that many of these crooked politicians we are talking about, check their history in the campuses. Many of them were equally rogue student leaders.
Well, the thing is
You
that
know?
it seems to, of course, somebody of my generation is used to student leaders as radicals who are holding government to account. Whereas the generation of student leaders, quite frankly, going back to Ibrahim Babangida's time in the 1980s, have been seen more as a group of people who wanted to get their feet under the table where the national cake was being shared.
Yes, and that's what we are seeing today. And that is why my generation in OAU drew a
Those students looked at people like you and said, that suffering is not for us. And we are going to...
yes.
we're
But
going to chop the
if
chocolates.
there is anything I've discovered in this campaign I'm running, it is that it pays to stand on the right side of history.
Okay.
And that is with the people. And you never can tell where you meet people. In our backwood there, everywhere I've gone to, mentioning my name and my history, has made a lot of people to recognize us. That are you the same Soweto? Because you can't keep these things under the table. Even in your little corner fighting for people, you are making history.
Okay.
People also need heroes, especially in this period when you have and I'm sorry to use the word, crooks in many places, masquerading as thought leaders.
Well, I'm going to have to. I'm going to have to stop because my section of the program, the ideas section. But I think that when you come back, we're probably going to look at the issue of how do you deal with the very nice person, but you can't win factor and others. But for now, I want to say that as the ideas section comes to a close, of course, I'm going to poke nose into the rest of the session. But as the ideas section comes to a close, please do follow us on Twitter at ideasradio.ng. Me, of course, with my own prejudice and biases, you can find at Nijama. And you can also go to the website of Ideas Radio, where you can get some of the past editions of the program. And as my typing fingers catch up, you can even get the transcripts of those programs. So thank you very much